The year 2025 has rocked the South Korean entertainment industry like never before. From shocking allegations involving A-list actors to power struggles inside major K-pop labels, these scandals have exposed the dark side behind the glamour. Beloved idols fell from grace. Once respected CEOs faced legal consequences, and brave artists began speaking out against abuse and exploitation. This isn't just tabloid drama. It's a wake-up call for the entire industry. In this video, we break down the biggest and most explosive scandals shaking Korea right now. If you want more raw, real stories behind the fame, don't forget to subscribe for future deep dives. When the news first broke, no one wanted to believe it. Su Hyun, a household name in South Korea and one of the most beloved actors in all of Asia, was suddenly at the center of a scandal so dark and unexpected that it shook the entire entertainment industry to its core. The rumor started small, whispered through online forums and anonymous posts. But it caught fire when Kim Se-ron, a former child actress known for her early brilliance, and more recently, her tragic downward spiral, was found dead in her apartment in February 2025. The authorities called it a suicide. Her family blamed the years of pressure and scandal she had endured, but they also pointed fingers directly at Su Hyun. According to her older sister, Se-ron had been involved with Kim since she was just 15. The relationship, they claimed, wasn't just toxic, it was manipulative. The idea that a respected star like Kim might have groomed her, hidden behind a carefully curated public image while exploiting someone much younger, sent the country into a frenzy. His agency fired back, claiming the relationship began in 2019, when she was 19 and legally an adult. But the damage had already been done. Screenshots of old text messages, blurry photos from hotel lobbies, and timelines compiled by armchair detectives flooded social media. People who once defended Kim now demanded the truth, and quickly. The backlash was swift and brutal. Major brands like Prada, which had recently renewed Kim's contract for a luxury campaign, immediately pulled his images from their platforms. Dinto, a cosmetics company that had bet big on his clean and sophisticated persona, severed ties. His commercials vanished from television within days. And while Kim stayed silent, refusing all interviews and canceling scheduled public appearances, the internet only grew louder. Hashtags calling for justice for Se-ron trended worldwide. Old interviews of her talking about her struggles resurfaced, re-examined through a harsher, more cynical lens. Every smile she'd ever faked, every tear she'd wiped away on camera, was suddenly seen as a clue, a cry for help that no one had listened to. People couldn't agree on much, but they all felt one thing: betrayal. Su Hyun wasn't just a star, he was a symbol of trust. For years, he had played roles that made him seem noble, gentle, even righteous. Audiences loved him not just for his acting, but for what he seemed to stand for. That's why this scandal hit so hard. If someone like him could fall, could be accused of something so vile, then who was left to believe in? The investigation didn't stop with speculation. Police began reviewing old call logs and examining photos taken by paparazzi over the years. Several people close to both actors were brought in for questioning, though nothing concrete was released to the public. There were no criminal charges, at least not yet. But in the court of public opinion, Kim was already on trial and losing. Fan pages were deleted. Support groups split into factions. Some diehards clung to the idea that he was innocent, that Se-ron's family was manipulating her death for attention or revenge. But they were the minority. Most people turned away from him in disgust. Meanwhile, the entertainment industry was left shaken. This wasn't just about two people, it was about a system that too often fails to protect its young stars. Kim Se-ron had been acting since she was a child, placed under intense scrutiny and pressure before she was old enough to even understand what fame meant. By her late teens, she had already faced legal trouble, criticism, and mental health struggles. Now, with her death and the revelations that followed, the industry was forced to reckon with what it had allowed to happen. Several other young actresses stepped forward anonymously, sharing stories of older male actors making inappropriate advances, of agencies turning a blind eye to predatory behavior. Kim Su Hyun remained mostly silent as the scandal unfolded. His legal team made a few statements, flatly denying any illegal relationship, insisting he had done nothing wrong. But the silence spoke volumes. His longtime manager was quietly let go. His agency's social media accounts were bombarded with hate comments, forcing them to restrict replies and hide posts. Even his most loyal fans began to wonder if the person they had admired for so long was not who they thought he was. The fall from grace was sudden and sharp. In less than a month, Kim had gone from national treasure to persona non grata. The story became a cautionary tale about fame, power, and the dark secrets that sometimes lurk behind polished images. Even if the law never caught up to him, the public already had. And in South Korea, sometimes that's the only verdict that matters. When SM Entertainment quietly removed Taeil from NCT in late 2024, fans were confused. There had been no explanation, no statement, not even a rumor strong enough to predict such a move. For months, the silence from the label and Taeil himself left a gap filled only with speculation. That changed in early 2025 when the truth finally surfaced. Taeil had been under investigation for a serious crime, and in March of that year, he was formally indicted on charges of aggravated quasi-rape, involving 2 other male accomplices and a female victim. The news exploded across headlines and social media, setting off one of the most disturbing scandals in recent K-pop history. Taeil wasn't just a singer, he was part of one of the biggest and most influential boy groups in Korea, and for years had built a reputation for being the quiet, humble, and responsible member. Fans often praised his gentle personality, his emotional voice, and his low-key public image. He wasn't the kind of idol who caused trouble or chased clout. That's why the allegations felt like a punch to the gut. The idea that someone so seemingly harmless could be involved in something so violent and degrading sparked disbelief, then outrage. According to prosecutors, the crime had occurred over a year earlier, but had been hidden from the public while the investigation unfolded. The victim, whose identity remains protected, allegedly came forward months after the assault, submitting medical records and messages exchanged with Taeil and the others involved. There were audio recordings and a diary entry that reportedly described the night in detail. Forensic experts verified the files, and once the evidence became difficult to ignore, the authorities moved forward with the indictment. The word aggravated in the charge referred to the presence of multiple perpetrators, and the court documents painted a horrifying picture of manipulation, coercion, and betrayal. As the news spread, fans didn't know how to react. Some flat out refused to believe it. The others dug into old videos and interviews, trying to find red flags they might have missed. Clips of Taeil making awkward jokes or suddenly changing moods during live streams were reinterpreted as signs of something darker beneath the surface. The group's online fan communities splintered, with some moderators shutting forums down altogether, refusing to let the space be overrun with speculation or hate. But the general mood was clear. This was not a situation the fandom could spin or forgive. SM Entertainment was criticized heavily for its handling of the situation. By staying silent and removing Taeil without explanation, many believed the company had tried to sweep the issue under the rug. It wasn't until the indictment became public that SM acknowledged the matter at all, and even then, the statement was short, impersonal, and offered no apology. Critics accused the agency of protecting its brand instead of protecting the public or supporting the victim. Legal experts began to debate the implications of quasi-rape in Korean law and whether the entertainment industry needed stricter internal monitoring of its idols' off-stage behavior. The other members of NCT didn't address the issue directly. Some looked visibly shaken during group appearances. Others canceled personal schedules. Their silence was understandable, given the legal sensitivity, but fans noted how the atmosphere around the group changed. Live events were suddenly toned down. Planned comebacks were delayed. Sponsorship deals quietly disappeared. And while SM tried to push ahead with other projects and subunits, the weight of the scandal lingered over every public move. Meanwhile, Taeil's name was scrubbed from official pages, merchandise listings, and promotional materials. Online platforms banned comments mentioning the case under his posts. But that didn't stop netizens from dragging his name across every major forum. International fans expressed anger and heartbreak, especially those who had supported him for years. Petitions demanding justice for the victim gained thousands of signatures. Some major Korean news outlets launched full-scale investigations into how entertainment companies handle criminal allegations, and whether public figures accused of violent crimes should be allowed to quietly step down without accountability. As for the victim, very little is known. She has remained anonymous, shielded by the court system. But her words, quoted in some leaked documents, struck a chord. She wrote that what hurt the most was not just what happened, but how easily everyone around Taeil acted like it hadn't. She said the silence was worse than the night itself, and that what she wanted now was not fame or money, but for people to know what he had done and believe her when she said it. No verdict had been reached by the time the indictment was made public, but public trust was already gone. Even without a trial, Taeil's career was over. His name became a cautionary tale not only about power and abuse, but about the dark possibilities that can hide behind even the most carefully managed celebrity image. When the rumors first started swirling that NewJeans might be breaking away from ADOR, nobody took them seriously. The group had skyrocketed to fame in just a couple of years, setting records for album sales, streaming numbers, and global popularity. Their fresh image and unconventional sound helped redefine the K-pop scene, and their connection with CEO Min Hee-jin was often seen as a perfect creative match. But behind the polished music videos and flawless performances, something was clearly wrong. In early 2025, all 5 members of NewJeans filed to terminate their contracts with ADOR, citing emotional abuse, discrimination, and workplace mistreatment. It was a move that stunned the industry and cracked open one of the most bitter and high-profile legal battles in Korean pop history. The group rebranded themselves as NJZ almost overnight, launching their own social media platforms and signaling that they were ready to continue performing, just not under the control of ADOR or its parent company, Huyp. The statements released by the girls' legal teams were serious. They described a pattern of psychological manipulation, unfair treatment compared to other groups, and a complete lack of protection when it came to personal boundaries. One member reportedly had her phone monitored without consent. Another claimed she was forced to perform despite a medical issue. The members also alleged they had little control over their own schedules and were punished when they questioned decisions made by management. Huyp was quick to respond. They dismissed the claims as false and accused external influences of manipulating the girls into breaking their contracts. They filed injunctions to block NJZ from promoting under their new name and demanded damages for what they called a breach of agreement. The corporate war escalated fast. ADOR leaked internal emails. NJZ's lawyers released audio recordings. It was no longer just a conflict over labor. It was a public feud that exposed the rotten core of how even the most glamorous idols can be treated behind the scenes. Fans were deeply divided. Some supported NJZ without hesitation, pointing to how young the girls were when they debuted and how little power they had in the system. Others accused them of being ungrateful or misled, especially since Min Hee-jin was largely credited with building their image and launching their careers. But most fans, regardless of which side they leaned toward, agreed on one thing. Something ugly had happened, and it was time for the industry to stop pretending everything was okay. The scandal wasn't just about one group. It became a mirror for the entire K-pop ecosystem. Commentators and former trainees began speaking out about the unrealistic standards, grueling hours, and emotional toll idols face from the moment they enter the system. Contracts are long, schedules are brutal, and mental health is often treated like a secondary concern, if it's acknowledged at all. New Jeans was one of the most successful acts in the country, and if even they felt trapped and mistreated, what did that say about the rest of the industry? Despite Hyp's attempts to block them, NJZ managed to perform at a major international event in Hong Kong just weeks after filing their lawsuit. The crowd was massive and the energy was electric. For many, it was a symbolic moment, a statement that they could survive and thrive without the backing of a corporate machine. The performance didn't just show their talent, it showed their resolve. Behind the scenes, the legal battle grew uglier. There were accusations that Huyp had blacklisted NJZ from working with certain producers. At the same time, anonymous insiders suggested that ADOR staff had been instructed to cut off all contact with the group. Lawsuits flew back and forth. One judge described the case as unprecedented in its scale and complexity, noting that the balance between corporate rights and artist freedom would likely be redefined by the outcome. Min Hee-jin's own reputation took a massive hit. Once considered a visionary, she now faced questions about whether she had abused her power. Old interviews in which she spoke passionately about supporting female artists were re-examined under a harsher lens. Her defenders claimed she was being thrown under the bus. Her critics said she was finally being exposed. As the dust continued to swirl, NJZ moved ahead with their plans. New music was teased, fan meetups were organized, and while the court battle was far from over, they made it clear they weren't backing down. The scandal wasn't just about a broken contract, it was about reclaiming control. It was about 5 girls who refused to let their fame be used as a leash. And in doing so, they may have started something that could reshape the K-pop world for years to come. When Min Hee-jin was first hailed as the creative genius behind New Jeans, she was seen as a trailblazer, a woman in a male-dominated industry who carved her own lane and gave K-pop one of its most unique and critically acclaimed acts. She talked about empowering female artists, about breaking traditional idol molds, and about building a brand that was different from anything fans had seen before. But by early 2025, that narrative began to collapse. In March, the Seoul Regional Employment and Labor Office fined Min for workplace harassment, following a months-long investigation. What had once been considered strict leadership or visionary ambition was now being described as toxic control and emotional abuse. It started quietly, like most industry scandals do. A few anonymous staff members leaked complaints about long hours, unreasonable demands, and emotional manipulation inside ADOR, the label Min led. At first, they were brushed off as bitterness from ex-employees. But as more testimonies came in, the stories began to align. Staffers described being screamed at over minor mistakes, publicly humiliated during meetings, and forced to work under intense stress without mental health support. One assistant said she was once made to revise a concept deck over 20 times in a single night, only for it to be tossed out completely the next morning. The tipping point came when it was revealed that Min had allegedly covered up multiple reports of sexual harassment within the company. According to internal records reviewed by investigators, several junior employees had come forward with complaints against a high-ranking manager. But instead of launching an investigation, Min allegedly advised them to let it go, or not make things difficult. Some of the victims were later reassigned to other departments or quietly pushed out of the company. It was a pattern that painted a picture of complicity, if not direct intimidation. When the Labor Office completed its review and issued the fine, it confirmed that Min had violated workplace safety laws. The ruling was a blow not just to her image, but to ADOR as a whole. It meant there was official recognition that the environment she oversaw was harmful, and that her leadership had crossed into misconduct. The fine itself was relatively small, just over 10 million won, but the symbolic damage was immense. No longer was Min seen as a misunderstood artist or eccentric boss. She was now someone who had allowed harm to fester under her watch. Huyp, ADOR's parent company, stayed mostly quiet at first. There were murmurs that they had known about internal issues for months, but chose not to act. Others believed they had tried to protect her until the media pressure became too intense. Eventually, Huyp released a brief statement saying they would be reviewing workplace policies and taking measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. But to many observers, it felt like too little, too late. For Min, the fallout was swift. Invitations to speaking engagements were canceled. Collaborations she had been working on were quietly shelved. Industry peers who once praised her vision began distancing themselves. In an attempt at damage control, she gave a highly publicized interview where she denied any intention to harm and claimed that her actions were misinterpreted. She said the creative process could be intense and emotionally charged, but that she never meant to cross a line. The public wasn't buying it. Comment sections were flooded with angry messages from fans and former supporters, many of whom expressed disappointment more than anything else. They had believed in her, not just as a producer, but as a symbol of change in a rigid system. The scandal also reopened a broader conversation about power dynamics in entertainment companies. How many other agencies had similar problems hidden beneath layers of success and image control? How many employees were suffering in silence, afraid to speak up? Advocacy groups used Min's case as an example of why stronger labor protections were needed in the industry. For years, K-pop had been built on discipline, speed, and perfection, but the human cost was starting to show. While Min retained her position at ADOR for the time being, her influence had clearly diminished. There were rumors she might step down or be reassigned, though nothing was confirmed. Internally, staff turnover increased. Some employees left voluntarily, unwilling to continue under her management. Others stayed, but made it clear they were watching closely. Trust had been broken, and it wasn't something a single press release could fix. In the eyes of many, the scandal marked a turning point, not just for Min Hee-jin, but for the illusion of untouchable executives in K-pop. It reminded everyone that behind the scenes, where the cameras don't reach, power can be abused just as easily as it can be celebrated. The lawsuit filed by KG, a 17-year-old member of the girl group VCHA, didn't just shock the K-pop community, it sent a ripple through the entire global music industry. For months, she had been performing with a smile, appearing in interviews and promotions as if nothing was wrong. But behind the scenes, she was preparing to take on a giant. In early 2025, KG filed a lawsuit against JYP USA, the American branch of the legendary Korean entertainment company, accusing them of child labor violations, emotional abuse, and exploitative working conditions. It was a move that instantly turned a rising star into the center of one of the most controversial legal battles in the history of K-pop's Western expansion. According to the documents submitted to court, KG described a work environment that was relentless, isolating, and psychologically damaging. She claimed she was forced to train and rehearse for hours on end without adequate breaks, denied medical support when she showed signs of burnout, and expected to maintain an image that left no room for personal expression. Her diet was reportedly controlled down to the calorie. She wasn't allowed to go outside without permission, and her social media accounts were heavily monitored, with management often scripting her posts and replies. What made the case especially disturbing was her age. KG had been just 16 when she was signed to the label, and even then, she was already being treated as a full-time employee in an industry known for pushing limits. She claimed she was frequently belittled by managers, called names when she failed to meet expectations, and pressured into continuing promotions even after multiple panic attacks. Her legal team argued that not only were her labor rights violated under US child labor laws, but her mental well-being was systematically ignored in the pursuit of profit. JYP USA denied the allegations outright. In a statement, the company insisted that all members of VCHA were treated fairly, given ample rest, and supported in accordance with both American and Korean labor laws. They framed KG's claims as a misunderstanding and suggested that the lawsuit had been encouraged by external parties, hoping to tarnish the company's reputation. But their defense fell flat. Supporters quickly dug up old footage of KG during fan events and concerts where she looked visibly exhausted. In one clip, she appeared to faint momentarily on stage before being pulled back to her feet and forced to continue. That video alone sparked outrage across social media, with fans asking why no one had intervened. The rest of VCHA remained silent during the early weeks of the scandal. Their schedules were quietly postponed. Interviews were canceled. Fans began speculating whether the other members were also suffering in silence. Some even started trending hashtags demanding that JYP release the girls from their contracts if they were being mistreated. KG, now living with her family in Los Angeles, kept a low profile. Through her lawyer, she released a short message thanking fans for their support and stating that she hoped her case would make things better for younger artists who didn't feel they had a voice. Industry insiders began to talk openly about the darker side of Western K-pop expansion. While Korean companies had long been criticized for their harsh training systems, many had assumed that operating in the US would force them to adapt to more humane standards. KG's lawsuit shattered that assumption. Critics pointed out that simply moving operations to another country didn't automatically mean the culture of control and exploitation would disappear. If anything, it had just moved with them, hidden under the banner of global success. The legal case gained traction in the media. Teen Vogue, Rolling Stone, and even CNN ran in-depth stories about the lawsuit, sparking debates on child labor in entertainment, particularly in the music industry. Advocacy groups began organizing around the issue. A petition to investigate all American branches of major K-pop agencies collected over 200,000 signatures within a week. Parents of other trainees reached out anonymously to reporters, describing similar experiences of isolation, overwork, and emotional breakdowns. As the weeks passed, JYP USA found itself increasingly cornered. Several former employees came forward, confirming elements of KG's story. One former vocal coach said she had seen KG cry quietly in a rehearsal room more than once, but was told not to interfere. Another staffer claimed the company had specific guidelines on how to correct behavior that included social isolation and silent treatment. Though JYP denied everything publicly, the evidence was piling up. For KG, the fight was just beginning. But in standing up, she had already done something powerful. She exposed a system that too many had accepted as normal and forced an industry that prided itself on perfection to take a hard look at what it was costing its youngest stars. Whether or not she won in court, she had already started a conversation that couldn't be silenced. As these 5 scandals unfold, one thing is clear: the K-entertainment world is changing. The days of silence, cover-ups, and untouchable stars are over. Fans are demanding transparency. Artists are reclaiming their voices, and the industry is being forced to reckon with its past. Whether justice is served in court or through public opinion, the impact is already irreversible. These stories matter, not just for the celebrities involved, but for the future of Korean entertainment itself. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more uncensored stories behind the spotlight.